So this was initially actually a workshop that I've held in person at Iconic offices about this time last year, actually. And it was an hour long. So I've cut it down a little bit, but hope to give you exactly the same value. So you should all have received a workbook that Christina emailed to you. So you don't need that right away, but that is going to be something we're going to work through in this talk. So, oh, sorry. So yeah, so to begin with, that's me with my pre-lockdown hair. So yeah, basically my name is Cara Bendon and I help startups create the brands that are going to make their business really successful. So I help them with both the branding, the logo design, website design, visual aspect, but also helping them flesh out the backstory of their brand, their about page, their mission, their values, their tone of voice. So yeah, I'm a big believer that to create a really engaging brand, you need so much more than just glossy visuals. So having good visuals is important with connecting with your audience, but at this time, maybe more than any other, when everything is done digitally, people are really craving human connections. So finding a way that you can communicate your brand's personality through language is really powerful. So I really love giving this workshop and I hope you find it helpful. So by the end of this workshop, even though it's a short, snappy one, you should basically understand what tone of voice is. You'll have thought more deeply about who your ideal customer is, and you will have 5 words that are specific to your business that will help guide your tone of voice for your brand. So I say this, if you don't want to work through the workbook right now, that's absolutely fine. You can come back to this video and you can work through the workbook. And actually the workbook has prompts within it. So you can even do that completely separately if that's not available for you to do right now. But you're also welcome to do it stage by stage. So what does tone of voice mean? Well, tone of voice is several things. First, it's how your brand will sound to customers. Second, it might be if you had adverts, what would their style be? So if you think, you think about like Mercedes-Benz or something like that, they would have a really swish TV ad. If you think about a brand like, I don't know, like Tesco Value or something like that, they might be a little bit more relatable and down to earth. So that's part of their tone of voice. Does the copy on your website show any personality? So I really believe that there's no opportunity is too small to communicate brand personality. So even if you're just giving washing instructions on the label of a piece of clothing, it could be an opportunity. For example, if you were an eco-friendly brand, to say, think before you wash me on a cooler wash, or I don't need to be washed so regularly, even putting that small bit of language in rather than just saying wash on 30 would be a good way of communicating both your brand's personality and your values. And do your social media posts and blog posts come through in certain ways. So this is especially pertinent if you are a solo entrepreneur, because it can be really, really hard when you're running a business to detach you and your tone of voice from your brand. So it can be comforting for you to have this guidance, this framework of these words that you keep coming back to as your guide for when you're writing in the brand. So feel free to ask questions at any point throughout, because then Christina can help me collect up a few of them, but I will be answering questions at the end. So for example, so I love this example. So this basically, you guys, if you are in Ireland, you may not be familiar with Sainsbury's, but they're basically one of our supermarkets. And as most supermarkets do, they have a basics range. And this is their lowest cost range. And what I really love about these is that they use the opportunity, just like I was saying, they have, even with a low cost product, they show some personality. And because it's low cost, they basically are saying it's not as good as the higher brands, but it's good enough. And that's basically the sort of tone of voice. And there's something quite endearing about that honesty. And it actually has a bit of humor in it. So I'm just going to read you some of these in case they're showing up a bit small on your screen. So the biological powder says cleans, no added promises. So that's really funny. It's really tongue in cheek because it sort of plays in on all those laundry adverts that sort of suggest that you're, going to have the wonderful house, you're going to have a fantastic day, you're going to just want to smell your bed sheets all day. And, it's maybe a bit excessive. So it kind of pokes fun at that. The self-raising flower says a little less refined, still rises to the occasion. And the bitter says a little less bitter, I think, because it's lower alcohol and it's a bit cheaper. So you can see how they use this opportunity to both make a point about their product, that they're not trying to claim it's the best, they're saying it's the cheapest, it's good, it will do, but they're also sort of having a bit of fun with it. So why does having a clear tone of voice matter? Well, it can make your brand more memorable. So, for example, if you had seen that in a supermarket, it might make you laugh, it might make you smile, you might take a photo of it, you might share it, you might also just remember that brand more. It can make a brand more desirable. So I'll come back to that later. So in that example where it was a really down to earth tone of voice, it's not maybe as applicable as if it was like a luxury product, or like if we talk about fragrance, and things like that they really appeal to your senses. It can make your brand come across as more human, and that's something we're really craving at the moment. And I have a couple of good examples of brands that do that well. It can make your brand seem more engaging, create trust, and it can differentiate you from your competition. So let me give you an example of this. So we said that it can create desire for a product, it can be persuasive. And here's a little example I'd like to share with you. So I took this from the photo and the copy. It had been altered to protect the identity of the original hotel. But I took this example from a hotel website when I was genuinely researching a stay in central London. So basically, first here we have, it's called the executive double, and they list out the facts. It says executive double room with 1 king bed, sleeps up to 2 people, room size 20 meters squared. It genuinely had that. I wasn't really sure what to do with that information. Bed, 1 king, and then amenities, and they've sort of brain dumped in a whole load of wonderful things there. Wi-Fi, rain shower, bath, tea, coffee making, aircon. It's a mixture of things you definitely expect and some things that are a bit nicer. And it was nearly £200 a night. So I thought I'd take it upon myself to rewrite this in a way that I thought would be more enticing. So my rewrite would call the room the executive, give it a bit of character. After a long day in the city, whether for business or pleasure, we know you need to unwind. Enjoy a soak with our aromatic end spa toiletries or freshen up in our rain shower. There's all the tools you need to make yourself look the part if you plan on heading out. Or why not enjoy a film from the comfort of your memory foam king-size bed? With our 1,000 thread count Egyptian cotton sheets and fluffy hypoallergenic pillows, you're guaranteed to wake up refreshed. £195 per night. So this last one might seem a little excessive, but actually, if you're going to spend that amount of money, you want to sort of be slightly seduced by the copy. You want to know that you're going to have a good stay. And this one is quite emotive. It makes me feel like I'm definitely going to have a good night's sleep. That's very important for me if I'm booking a hotel room. And then also it's going to feel nicer than home because I'm going to have fluffy towels, the best cotton sheets, the rain shower, these lovely toiletries. And what's interesting is every bit of information I've taken from there was actually taken from the list in the real listing. It's just that they weren't really selling it. So yeah, you guys can let me know as well, because some people just prefer functional copy, but I think it depends on the scenario. So we'll talk about your audience shortly, but it's about understanding your audience and their priorities at the moment. So the audience for this hotel room could be couples wanting a weekend away. It could be a businessman or woman, it could be a number of things. But whether they're normally quite sort of time poor and busy, when they're looking at this, it's a sort of luxury decision. So they actually want to be sort of enticed. So that's why if it was selling them something like, like I don't know, an electrical contract or something more functional. Like if they were buying a dustbin, they probably wouldn't want this level of copy. It wouldn't be appropriate. But for something that is at its high price point and appeals on these sort of emotive levels of wanting, you know, somewhere that feels lovely, feels better than home, makes you feel well rested, makes you feel special, that's a really good opportunity for a tone of voice that is a bit more detailed and storytelling in this way. Okay, so we're going to, I've got some more examples of tone of voice at the end of this talk, but I wanted to jump right in on the workbook for you guys. So you can bring up your workbook now if you'd like to, or like I said, you can do it later on. But first of all, we would begin, and this is pretty much true of everything with branding. We start by thinking about your audience. So who are the people who will pay for your product or service? Are they male or female? So start on a really high level and just put the most obvious things about them down. So, and before you just put men and women, just question whether there's a slight bias towards one or another, or if that's really true. And then break down their demographics. Are they urban? Are they young? Put down, you know, some key things. Now, this might feel a bit difficult because if you're just starting out, you might not actually know who your customers are yet, but you've got to know who you're aiming towards. In terms of if you've done a market plan or any market research, you'll know roughly the demographic or the niche that you're hoping to appeal to. So put down that information. So the next part, so time for the workbook, there's my prompt. So yeah, so the next part actually is to think about them more. So in the previous example, I put this lad and I'd put male, London, 20 to 35. Well, 20 to 35 is a huge difference. So, you know, somebody who's 35 might be a homeowner, might be, you know, if it was a man, it might be a father, might be in middle management. Somebody who's 20 might be a penniless student. So it's quite important to try and break it down as much as possible, which is why, so in your workbooks, the first thing you'll see is there's 25 different personas there. So they are fictional people that are designed to sort of broadly cover the most obvious sort of people within the marketplace. Now, I say with disclaimer because I'm always thinking of new people to add in there, but it's deliberately quite reductive to make you think about the main groups of people in there. So if you have more of a specific niche, you may need to kind of work on what you know about your customer base and find some images, maybe using something like Unsplash or iStock to find some images or images of actual customers to build up a persona that feels more specific. But actually, this tool is something I've used across a broad spectrum of different businesses, and it does work quite well if you don't have such a clear niche. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to go through the workbook, and I'd like you to pick between 1 and 3 of the personas that fits with your ideal audience. Okay, and then next, I want you to think about their lifestyle. So for example, here we've got a mum here, and if you were doing, you know, if you were marketing, I don't know, luxury, herbal skincare for mums or postnatal products or things like that. You obviously, mums are your audience, but you just need to build a bigger picture in that they are probably multitasking, they're probably sleep deprived, you know, not to use stereotypes, but this is what we know from, you know, these areas, these people, that generally, you know, they'll probably be juggling a lot at once. They'll probably feel a little bit of guilt about spending a high price point on themselves. They, you know, maybe struggling to kind of in terms of they might not want to spend on a higher price point thing at all. So there's some interesting things there that your tone of voice, your copy would have to understand. Maybe it would be about relating completely and saying, you know, I know that you may not feel that you have time or the money to treat yourself right now, but here's why it's really important, you know. So yeah, is your student somebody who might be interested in streetwear, but also is on a student loan and worrying about getting a job? You know, so it's like understanding your price point with that person's concerns and lifestyle. And also, yeah, I mean, on the other side, we've got this quite glamorous girl here. Like, is she an influencer? Does she buy quite high end? You know, so for her, maybe your copy would have to be quite aspirational. So all things to bear in mind. So here are some prompts for you. So yeah, where do they buy their groceries? So again, I'm really sorry, I'm going to miss the Irish reference here, I'm sure, but do they buy their groceries at, you know, Tesco? Or what do you have? You have Super Value? Or do they buy them at like Harvey Nichols or Waitrose? Those are like more high-end places that we have that you could buy food over here. I'm sure you have similar. You know, what kind of clothing labels do they wear? Do they just get that? Do they get their things from the charity shop and the supermarket because they're in a hurry and they don't care? Do they care about certain designer labels? Do they care about the ethical credentials of the brands they buy? Do they live in a city or are they out in the countryside? If they, you know, if they were to buy a magazine, what kind of magazines in the newsagent shelf would they be drawn to? What would the ideal weekend look like? What would they be doing? Would they be golfing? Would they be crafting? Would they be looking after their children? Would they be reading an inspiring biography? Things like this. So what I'm doing is helping you build a bit of a picture. And again, like I said before, it might feel a bit uncomfortable to just start imagining up this life. But if you have any existing clients, you can actually ask them some of these questions to get to know them better. But you can also look, you know, using things like social media to find your ideal customer and just looking at the other pages that they like or follow or the kind of content they share. And generally, I would say it's good. I mean, you should definitely be trying to connect with who your ideal customer is. So try and find out as much as possible. So actually knowing, you know, a real person that fits within your ideal customer profile is very helpful. And yeah, so basically what I'd like you to do is list out a few brands. So maybe take 5 brands that they love and write them down in your notebook. So I'm going to give you a bit of an example how this might play out. So here I've listed a number of brands that came up for somebody. So I have made up this hypothetical avatar of a person. So this is actually a woman who is in her late 20s. She's 28. And here are some of the brands that she likes and trusts. So on here, we've got Deliveroo, that she would use for takeout. We've got HelloFresh, which is also a cooking brand where they deliver boxes full of ingredients to you. We've got Elle magazine with Reese Witherspoon on. We've got Nespresso, a MAC foundation, some Nike running shoes, a Zara bag, and Marc Jacobs perfume, Russell and Bromley, which is a shoe store. I don't know if you have that, but it's like yeah, it's like a mid-range or like a bit more expensive. Whole Foods, which is again a food shop, Oral-B toothpaste, and Amazon Prime. So you might look at this, and these are just a selection of brands, and kind of think, "Oh God, they're quite disparate, those." But actually, I'd say, well, I can tell here this is somebody that cares about their health, because with the HelloFresh, with the running shoes, with the Whole Foods market, with the you know, dentist recommended toothpaste, they're obviously somebody that cares about their health, but I'm not seeing like fanatical levels of it. So I'm saying somebody fairly sporty, again, with the Zara and the MAC and the perfume, or maybe with the Zara and the MAC and the Russell Bromley, we could say they like to look fashionable, they like to look good, they like to look polished. I'm not seeing like a load of fashion things on here, so I wouldn't say they're like an influencer or a fashionista type person. I'd say they like to look polished, they like to look contemporary, but they're not hugely sort of creative and expressive with their style. You know, with the Elle and the perfume, it's somebody, and the Nespresso, it's somebody who likes to treat themselves, but within limit. It's not somebody that buys designer or sort of really indulges in luxury too much. It's somebody who likes little luxuries, looks after themselves, somebody who probably is working maybe in a corporate company or something like that. So basically, I don't know if you saw what I did there, but I just tried to kind of see some things in common, some sort of threads. It's a bit like detective work. So what I'd like you to do is, so if you see these brands here, from the brands that I have in this example, I would say none of these brands are the cheapest, but they're not the most expensive. So I can see this person really trusts in sort of like mid-range. So that would be one of the things I would put in the notebook. And then I would say that they care about their health. That would be something else, quite health focused. And maybe, maybe they try something, they're open to trying new things, because they have a couple of delivery services or convenience. So yeah, convenience could be something else. So they're quite handy because you can think, okay, it's really important. These things are really important to my ideal customer. So then just take one of them, highlight the most important thing that you can sort of see. So here I would say maybe mid-range, I would say. So basically I would say that in terms of how that translates to tone of voice, we want it to be fairly confident, but not patronizing. It doesn't have to be super aspirational. Like it needs to be aspirational to a level, but it doesn't need to be like trying to sell me like the luxury hotel room. It just needs to be, like a little more relatable than that. So like aspirational, but a little relatable. So I would sort of put mid-range as, for me, that would make sense, but put whatever word would make sense to you based on yours. And so also, yeah, just a note to say that the average person buys from over 100 different brands a year. So there's lots of variety. So, don't worry if natural connections aren't really coming up. If they are, brilliant. If they're not, don't worry, because everyone on earth will probably go on Facebook or shop on Amazon, or, well, not everyone, but, there's some actions that almost every persona and demographic would take, so they're not as revealing. So don't worry too much if a clear thread doesn't come out. Okay. So yes, so we've put in the attributes. So like I said, to highlight the kind of key one, all of these little takeaway boxes that you have in the workbook are going to come together at the end. Okay. So now we've thought about your audience, and that's something you can kind of go back and do more in your own time. So now we're going to think about you and the values that you have. So if you think about why you set up your business, what's your passion in it? What are you really, really hoping to share with the world, or with your customers? What's the experience that is really important to you to deliver? So it might be that you really want to help people get healthy. It might be that you want to provide an aspirational escape, like a sort of, aspiration for them. It might be that you want to help people with whatever it might be. It might be really important to you to be sustainable and look after the environment. It might be important for you to support women. It might be important for you to provide a space of calm for your customers. So those are just a few examples there to prompt you. So try and think about what matters most to you in terms of your values, and write that down. Okay, so hope I'm not moving too fast. Let me know if I am. So yeah, I mean, again, if I was going to go back to this one, like for me, one of my values, one of my values is helping other women. So that's how does that come through in my tone of voice? Well, it might just be the use of a certain hashtag, or it might just be the type of content I share. Now that I know isn't as much language, but it's all part of the sort of whole that makes up sharing your brand personality. It also your values obviously come into your actions, and that's the most powerful way you can communicate them, is by the actions you take in your business, like being sustainable, or hiring from a certain group of people that you want to support, or whatever. But in terms of your language, it also will shine through. Okay, so then finally I have this personalization exercise. So, sorry, it sort of spoiled what that one would be down there. But basically, the way I like to think of this is, imagine that you are handing over first of all, imagine that your brand is a person. If you can imagine your brand as a person, it's especially hard when it's just you. But if you think, okay, this is me, I'm Cara, I run a branding consultancy. And then this is, or I'm Cara and I run a branding consultancy, but I also have other aspects to me. I have a brother and sister, I love cats, whatever it may be. And then this over here is the brand. And this here for me is, is helpful, is down to earth, is informative, you know, and then there's a crossover, you know, both of them are feminist, whatever it may be. So if you try and think in that way, that might help you. But if that's difficult, my little tip for you is to imagine that you had to take 6 months sabbatical or break from your business for some reason, and you had to hand over to somebody else to run your business, you know, to work on your website, to write all your social media, to deal with all your clients. You know, if you were to kind of leave them a message about what your business is, what your brand is, you know, how would you describe it? You might say, okay, so remember, you know, we're not too trendy or we're not too pushy. We are X, Y, Z. So yeah, see if you get anywhere with that. So yeah, for example, yeah, we might have friendly, helpful, and intelligent. So, I mean, that could be so many different brands, but that could be really helpful for a brand in terms of they know, so maybe it's like a technology support service. So they might, in terms of being helpful, share lots of tips. In terms of being friendly, they, instead of saying 9 times out of 10, turning your computer back on out of 10 fixes the problem, they might say, we've all done it. Called in IT and actually turning it off and on, sorted it. Here are 3 ways you can sort your tech issues in future, whatever. So it's basically softening the tone of voice, being more friendly, more relatable. And in terms of intelligence, they could share that maybe by, you know, making sure that they don't use language that is kind of fashionable to use, like they don't use language that feels off-brand, so they're not going to start using sort of street language or slang. In terms of intelligent as well, it might be the type of content they share. It might be that they say something like, oh, on this day the first computer was developed, or whatever it may be. I'm not sure why I picked up IT, it's not necessarily my area of strength, but yeah, and then for example, another one at the bottom, that could be like a perfume brand, or it could be a clothing brand. It's confident, it's sexy, and it's playful. You know, that one has, it oozes personality to me. You know, I couldn't wait to write for them. That's how it feels to me. So these words can be really useful. Okay, I'm going to move on now. So that's just what I said to you before. Okay, so now what I'd like you to do is you go back through the workbook, and every time there has been a box that says the takeaway, you put that down into the final 5 lines, and you should end up with, I think it was a value, a comment from the brands that your audience likes, and then the 3 words that you would describe your business as. So you should end up with 5 words there. Let me know if you do. And what I would advise you to do is basically, when you are creating something new, even, you know, even with visual branding, anything, you need to try it out to really find a feel for it. And with practice, you will gain more confidence in writing in this tone of voice. So what I like to suggest is that you either write these 5 words on a post-it and put it on your laptop or in front of you when you're working, or put it in the back of your notebook so that you can refer to it if you're ever writing. And it will just help you when you start writing a post or a blog post or a social media post, or if you do have to do some advertising or create a post or whatever it may be, you can write the copy that you need to say, and then you can go back through it, look at these 5 points and say, wait a minute, is this helpful? Is this friendly? Or wait, is this aspirational? Because maybe all you've done is describe exactly what your service offers. And actually, if aspiration is very important to you as a value, or is something that appeals in your audience, then it's really important that you give your copy that lift. Okay. So now I'm just going to share with you a few examples. Oh, so yeah, so a couple of points here. Punctuation can be as important as language. So that's really powerful. So have a look at some other brands and notice that, for example, confident brands often use short sentences with full stops. And I'll show you one of those. We're going to come to an Apple example later, and you will see that. And actually their punctuation turns the whole ad around. The other thing is that content choices are just as revealing. So yeah, what stories are you telling? What kind of imagery are you showing? Does it tie in with these attributes for your brand? So some examples. So I love these ads by Tropicana, because that goes very much to that point that I just said about the visuals tying in with the copy perfectly. You need them both to work together to create the most powerful impact. Not one on its own, usually will be strong enough. Well, sorry, that I don't. Yeah, of course, one on its own can be strong enough, but together they have the most impact. So Tropicana succeed here in making a very clear point about their business, that they don't add any additives or sugars. It's just fruit juice. It's just orange juice. But they do it in a very visually striking way. And the fact that the point I was just saying about punctuation, nothing added, nothing taken away. The fact they went for short copy there rather than long copy really shows their confidence in their product. So that's something I would definitely recommend you to do, is try saying less. So yeah, especially if you're trying to make a big, bold statement about your business, it's very powerful. They could have, lost that message in there with, at Tropicana HQ, we're big believers in nutrition and fruit. We've always grown up having an orange a day, so why wouldn't we make our orange juice that way? That would be, it would be another style, but they would lose their power within that. So it would be storytelling, but it doesn't have the same impact. So I love this one from John Lewis. So feel free to check our prices against our competitors. We do it all the time. So again, they're using copy in a really powerful way to not just show their brand personality, but to demonstrate a service. So in that piece of short copy, they then go on in a slightly longer piece of copy to explain that that's part of their never knowingly undersold promise that they will price check. But what's really good is obviously it starts out where it basically communicates ease, like a sort of self-confidence emanates, because they're saying feel free to look at our competitors, and then it twists around with the we do it all the time. Click by 7 p.m, collect next day from 2 p.m, rip open anytime after that. So again, it helps them communicate that they do next day click and collect, but in a really fun and playful way. And it sort of shows how, especially with all the images of the products, it conveys an added message that you can't wait to open the things that you're going to order from John Lewis online. So that's very clever. So we spoke about punctuation. So here we are. I would say Apple are the absolute dons of super confident tone of voice. So MacBook, light, years ahead. So obviously it reads as light years ahead, showing how technological they are. So innovation, I would say they would be innovative, bold, aspirational, innovative and bold, I would say, maybe for Apple. But also they've done that thing of showing a USP of their product, because their MacBook is so light. So IKEA, I think IKEA's tone of voice is wonderful. I love their tagline, the wonderful every day. For me, that is a really good example of how, you don't have to just have a very, very aspirational or a very sort of Apple type brand to have a clear tone of voice. Sometimes the most warmth and personality comes through in the more sort of down to earth brands. So again, the visual works well with it. So dinner parties now suitable for all ages. And it says, kids and adults behave better when they're sitting around the table. That's why we've designed our in-golf chairs in 2 sizes so all your guests can feel part of the party, no matter how big or small. So it again makes a point about their products, but it shows. So for IKEA, I would say that they are playful, relatable, and I'm not sure what the last one would be. I usually work in 3s, by the way. You can work in 3s or 5s, whatever. But yeah, I would definitely say they're playful, relatable, helpful, I'd say. Maybe humorous as well. They often are quite humorous. They weigh in on things like April Fools quite well. Okay, so completely different. We've got Gillette. So Gillette don't have any room for humor or being down to earth. They are all about aspiration and like making their product seem like, I mean, they basically made it look like lasers shoot out of this razor. They're making their product look as high tech as possible. So, you know, with their new, but the Fusion, the Pro Glide, all of the language that they're using, Pro and Fusion, it's very aspirational. It's more complicated and more space age and big than is needed for a razor. But then just the copy on here, it's here, is actually very like Apple. So it's like, you know, it assumes that the customer has been dying to see this product. It comes from such a place of confidence that it's like, you can't wait for us to release our razor, you know. And you could see how there are other brands like Estrid is a brand I'm seeing loads of at the moment on social media in terms of their razor. They come from a completely different angle. They're a bit like, have hair on your body, shave it if you want, it's up to you. Estrid will look nice in your bathroom. So, you know, very, very different tone of voice for the same product for different audiences, and that's key. Okay, Ben & Jerry's, so they've got a really nice playful tone of voice, so they use a lot of humor. So your parents have started charging you rent, we make it all better. So, you know, they're understanding their audience. So they're not, I mean, obviously Ben & Jerry's could be eaten by so many people, there's no threshold on that, but in doing this they're sort of relating to, you know, maybe late teens or 20s that, you know, you are still living at home, you haven't got your own place, and yeah, so it's kind of using that kind of scenario. So what you could do is, if you have multiple audiences, if you have the confidence to think like a bigger brand and to put out little bits of communication that only speak to one part of your audience at a time, like you could have this ad in a magazine and then you could have another one 2 pages later that had a completely different kind of message, and it would actually make the point that everyone can enjoy Ben & Jerry's and it's there for you in lots of situations. So there's lots of clever ways you can sort of play with language and your audience and understanding your audience that way. So I'd like to sort of leave you with the mission that wherever you go, pay attention to the tone of the brands that are around you. So yeah, now that I've talked you through what to look out for, and you've been part of this workshop, maybe you will notice a little more. Maybe it was something you always were aware of, but do have a notice in it. You'll really start to notice that you grow the skill as you start looking more and more at different brands and how they talk to you. Okay, thank you so much.